It's time for another episode of The Ready Writer. Let's get started. You're watching The Ready Writer, a show where I get to speak to writers of all different genres, mediums, and experiences. The Ready Writer. Are you ready? Hi, and thank you for watching another episode of The Ready Writer. I am your host, Casey Bell, and today's guest is Doug Lawrence. He is the author of The Gift of Mentoring. Let's listen in on our interview. All right, so my first question that I have for you is, was writing or becoming an author, writing a book, something you aspired to when you were younger?
No, no, it definitely wasn't. Uh, actually, that's a really reflective question, because when I think back now, I I don't think it was even on my agenda or on my bucket list of things to do. And it was only as a result of primarily three people that encouraged me that I had a story to tell that needed to be told.
Okay, so first talk about what inspired this book, Gift of Mentoring, and then tell us just a little bit about what it's about.
So actually, what inspired it was it was a friend of mine, actually a mentor of mine, was actually he had written his own book, and he said, you can do this. If I can do this, you can do this too. And he said, you have a great story that needs to be told. And then that same line of thinking was shared by a couple other people. Obviously my wife was one of my greatest fans. And then one of my other mentors, as I was starting to develop my mentoring business, and that I had an individual that has stuck with me through thick and through thin. And he also said, gosh, Doug, you've got to get this written and you've got to get your story out there. And so as a result of that, I sat down and started to think about how I was going to do this. And the gift of mentoring is primarily, it's looking at mentoring through the eyes of a practitioner, not through the eyes of an academic. So I'm looking at it from, based on my lived experiences that I've had, I've pulled those together. There's, I think, 5 case studies that are in the book itself. And those 5 case studies are actual lived experiences, things that I've experienced, people that I have had the pleasure of working with in a mentoring relationship. So there's lots of different, in addition to the case study, there's also, tips on how to go about implementing a mentoring program and a number of different things, different techniques and things for people to think about. One of the big things that I always find is that we're so quick to want to give advice and kind of not so much guide, but actually push somebody into a direction that we think they need to go, where in fact someone who is, as I call them, an effective mentor, they ask a series of questions to guide you to the answer. So that's all of that stuff is what's in the Gift of Mentoring, the book. And it was, I published that in 2014, and it's been well received. I want to share the one comment that always seems to stick with me is that I've had people say when they've read the book, the experience that they got from reading the book was, it was like they were sitting beside me on a park bench and I was actually reading the story to them. And I can't think of anything much more powerful than that, to be able to, people can actually visualize, they can actually feel you sitting beside them reading the story to them. That sort of says that, the book is very, very much a readable book that people can enjoy and can see themselves in some of the stories that are in there.
Good. So for someone who's actually looking for a mentor, can you give us one tip on what describes a good mentor, something they should be looking for in that mentor?
They need to, there needs to be that connection that, two people have even outside of the mentoring space. So, if you just take a moment and you think of, oh gosh, I've got, that's one of my best friends. And why is that individual one of your best friends? Well, it's because you've actually made a connection. The big thing for most people is that mentoring is a two-way trusted relationship. So you need to be able to develop that level of trust with that individual. And so part of that is definitely the connection. The other part of it is that, one of the key attributes of a really good mentor is they have the ability to listen and hear what the person that they're working with, what the mentee is actually saying. And then from there, they can sort of think their way through what are some questions I need to ask to help this person work through the challenges they're talking about. So it would definitely be looking for somebody that can build trust, that is good at building relationships, is a great, as I call them, an active listener. Those would be the key things that they should be looking for.
Thank you. So, being an author was not something you aspired to, where did you seek information to begin the publishing process, and how was the publishing process for you? Were there any surprises along the way?
I think I'd be fooling myself if I said there wasn't surprises along the way. One of the things I found that was the whole editing process. So I self-published the book. I didn't go through a publisher. I self-published it, and if I were to do that over again, I probably would do it differently. I would probably be looking for a publicist to guide. Not probably. I would be looking for a publicist to be guiding and working with me to get the book through to it actually being published. Um, I went down that path because one of my mentors, who I mentioned earlier, had written a book and he self-published it. And it's a piece of cake. He must have been eating different kind of cake than what I was, because I found it at times a bit challenging. The one thing I found that was difficult was the editing process, was to get it to a final state where we could actually publish it, and publish it with obviously a level of satisfaction that what we put out there was good. So as I'm heading down the path towards number two, I definitely am doing things differently.
With that said, are you in the process of working on another book?
Yes, I am. I'm on book number two, and I'm focusing on it as much as I possibly can. I also have a third book kind of off in the wings, but it's a little ways out yet to be able to deal with it. But the second book it's more about what it is mentoring mental health. So I've done a lot of research around mental health, mental well-being, post-traumatic stress, operational stress, injury. And so what I found with my research, and obviously with my lived experiences, is that there is a place for mentoring to be part of the support structure for mental health. And so the book is very much focused on telling that story. Obviously, I'm a storyteller, so there's case studies and stories in the book itself to bring out the power of the gift of mentoring, that it does have a place in the support structure for those 3 or 4 different situations.
That's good. All right, so I have one last question for you. This is more of a fun question. If you had the chance to co-author a book with any author, whether they be dead or alive, who would it be and why?
Oof. Actually, that's a good question, because the one that seems to jump to my mind is Ken Blanchard. And Ken, he writes books that are they're stories, and they capture your attention right out of, as soon as you crack the book open. he would definitely be somebody that I would love to co-author a book with for sure. I've read a number of his publications, his books, and that he would I would have to call him a role model for me for sure.
Effective mentoring is a lifelong journey of learning and developing personally and professionally. Gift of Mentoring by Doug Lawrence. Available on Amazon.com.
Thank you again for watching. To Doug Lawrence, I want to thank you for taking the time of sharing your journey with me and the audience. And of course, audience, thank you so much for watching. Have yourself a wonderful day.